The weight of the crown, the protector. In a world of demigods, monsters, and divine fury, one man stood as the only thing between a civilization and its total extinction. He wasn't a son of a god. He didn't have invulnerable skin. He was a man of flesh and blood, a husband and a father. Yet he was the only warrior who made the mighty Achilles hesitate. This is the story of Hector, the Tamer of Horses, the man who carried the weight of Troy on his shoulders while the gods played dice with his fate. The air in Troy was thick with the scent of salt and impending death. For 9 years, the Greek ships had sat on the horizon like a gathering storm. Inside the walls, the people looked to one man. Not the king, Priam, who was withered by age, not Paris, whose lust had started the fire. They looked to Hector. Imagine the pressure. Every time Hector buckled his bronze armor, he wasn't fighting for glory. He was fighting for the heartbeat of his city. He was the wall that would not break. While the Greeks fought for plunder and fame, Hector fought for the morning light in his wife Andromache's eyes. He fought for the future of his infant son, Astyanax. But the gods are cruel. They love a tragedy. Every night, Hector stood on the ramparts of Troy, watching the thousands of Greek campfires, knowing that among them was a monster named Achilles, a man who was more weapon than human. Hector knew his limits. He felt the fatigue in his bones. He saw the cracks in his shield, but he never let his men see him tremble. The suspense of Troy wasn't in the battles, it was in the silence of the nights. Hector knew the prophecy. He knew that if he fell, the gates would fall. He was the living pulse of a doomed city. His brother Paris brought the war, but Hector brought the hope. He led the charges, he broke the Greek lines, and for a moment it seemed like a man could actually defy destiny. He drove the Greeks back to their ships, his spear a blur of bronze. He was winning, but in the Iliad of life, victory is often the cruelest trap. By the light of the burning Greek ships, Hector felt the tide turning. He thought he had killed the great Achilles in the heat of the fog. He thought the war was over, but when he pulled back the helmet of the fallen warrior, he didn't see the face of his rival. He saw Patroclus, the one person Achilles loved more than life itself. The silence that followed was louder than any war cry. Hector hadn't won the war, he had just woken the beast, and now the God-man was coming for his blood. The dance of death, the confrontation. The scream that tore through the Greek camp wasn't human, it was the sound of a god losing his soul. Achilles was no longer a soldier, he was a hurricane of vengeance, and he was heading straight for the Scaean gate. Inside, Hector stood alone. His father begged him to come inside. His mother wept, but Hector knew, you cannot run from a shadow, and you cannot hide from your own end. The ultimate showdown of the Bronze Age was about to begin. The dust rose in golden clouds as the chariot of Achilles approached. The armor he wore was forged by Hephaestus himself. It glowed with an eerie, supernatural light. Hector stood outside the massive gates of Troy, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. For a brief, terrifying second, the hero of Troy felt the cold hand of fear. He ran. 3 times they circled the city of Troy, a race between the fastest man alive and the man who had everything to lose. The gods sat on Olympus, watching like spectators in a theater. Zeus held up the golden scales of fate. On one side, the life of Achilles. On the other, the life of Hector. The scale tipped. The light of Apollo, Hector's protector, faded away. He was alone. Suddenly, Hector stopped. He turned. He looked into the eyes of the man-slaughtering Achilles. He saw no mercy, no honor, only a void of black rage. Hector made one request: give my body back to my people. Achilles' response was a chill that still echoes through history. There are no bargains between lions and men. The fight was a blur of bronze and blood. Hector threw his spear with the strength of a dying sun. It hit the shield of Achilles and bounced off as if it were a toy. The realization hit Hector harder than any blade. The gods had abandoned him. He drew his sword, knowing it was useless, but refusing to die without a fight. He charged. It wasn't a charge for victory. It was a charge for dignity. Achilles, with his divine speed, found the one opening in Hector's armor, the throat. Hector fell. The dust of Troy tasted like copper. As the life faded from his eyes, he saw the vision of the future, the burning towers, the enslaved women, the end of his line. But Achilles wasn't done. The death of Hector wasn't enough to satisfy his rage. He pierced Hector's ankles, threaded leather thongs through them, and tied the Prince of Troy to the back of his chariot. The people on the walls watched in horror as their hero was dragged through the dirt. The protector was gone. The tragedy had only just begun. The ghost of the hero. The legacy. A hero is not defined by how he lives, but by the hole he leaves behind when he is gone. Hector was dragged through the dust for 12 days, yet his body did not decay. The gods, moved by his nobility, protected his flesh even in death. But while Achilles sat in his tent, consumed by a rage that wouldn't die, an old man was walking through the darkness, carrying a weight heavier than any mountain. King Priam was coming to kiss the hands of the man who murdered his son. The meeting between Priam and Achilles is the most tense moment in the history of literature. The king of Troy, the most powerful man in the East, knelt before the Greek butcher. He didn't ask for the war to end. He didn't ask for his city to be spared. He asked for his son. "Remember your own father," Priam whispered. In that moment, the tension broke. Achilles wept. He saw in Priam his own father's grief. He saw in Hector a reflection of his own mortality. The body of Hector was returned. For 9 days, Troy mourned. The lament of Andromache broke the hearts of even the toughest veterans. They knew that with Hector, the soul of Troy had been buried. Without his leadership, the city was a hollow shell. They didn't know about the wooden horse yet. They didn't know about the fire that would consume their homes. All they knew was that the Tamer of Horses was silent. But look at the world today. We don't remember the names of the men Hector killed. We remember the man who stood his ground when he knew he would lose. Hector represents the best of humanity, the courage to do your duty when the gods are against you. He wasn't a conqueror, he was a defender. He wasn't a killer, he was a protector. Even his enemies, the Greeks, whispered his name with a respect they gave to no other Trojan. The fires of Troy eventually went out. The stones of the walls crumbled into the sea. The name of Achilles became a symbol of power, but the name of Hector became a symbol of character. To this day, when we speak of a Hector, we speak of a man who stands between his family and the storm. He was the first true human hero of our history, the man who taught us that even if we are destined to fall, we can choose how we stand. The gates of Troy are gone, but Hector still guards the memory of what it means to be a man.